Well, hello, and thank you for joining me today on Geezers of Gear, episode number 221. Today's podcast is brought to you by Stratum Productions. Stratum understands that successful events hinge on flawless execution. With years of experience in the audiovisual industry, Stratum Productions specializes in providing event planners with cutting-edge solutions that seamlessly blend technology and creativity. From intimate boardroom meetings to sprawling conventions, they're committed to delivering experiences that resonate and leave a lasting impact on audiences of all sizes. Stratum Productions truly do stand out above the rest when it comes to event production. To learn more about what Stratum does and who they are as a company, please visit stratumpro.com. And also today, I would like to give an honorable mention to a sort of non-sponsor sponsor. They are a sponsor in that they're a friend of the show and have provided a great service to the industry. So, of course, I'm talking about my favorite coffee company, Coffee Kult, coffee with a K, Kult with a K. And you can visit coffeecult.com and order our own Geezer's Grind, which is our own custom blend that was done for us by Coffee Cult. And every purchase of Coffee Cult Geezer's Grind provides a benefit to the industry in that Coffee Cult have graciously given up the proceeds on orders to donate that money to robybackstage.com. I'm sorry, Roby Backstage. There is no .com. And that money then goes to help people in our industry who either are sick, injured, or just in need. And so it goes to a great cause, but it's also an excellent, excellent coffee. And if you want to learn more about Coffee Cult, you can watch a recent episode that we did with Jamie Martis, the CEO and founder of Coffee Cult. Pretty interesting stuff. I learned a lot about coffee and the coffee I'm drinking and why I like it. And so, yeah, you get not only a good feeling in that you've given to a charity that helps our industry, but you also get a great cup of coffee. So please visit coffeecult.com and search for Geezer's Grind, and you will not be dissatisfied. Thank you so much. And we are back here. So I'm looking forward to episode 221 today, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. But first, a bit of news from the last week or so. First of all, a recent guest on our show, Martin Thomas, lighting designer, production manager, super great guy, got married here in Florida, in Central Florida, over the weekend. And I was supposed to be at his wedding with Missy. And unfortunately, I thought I had to miss it. And then by the time I realized I could probably shuffle my schedule and get myself there, it was too late. They weren't able to change the numbers. And so I had to miss it. So I'm bummed. I saw the pictures. They were great. I've just heard really cool things about the wedding from Howard Ungerleider, who was there, and Cosmo, who was there. So, yeah, I missed it. I'm bummed. And it happens. Also last week, Chauvet opened their new building here in South Florida, and it's a great space. It happens to be right next door to Roby's facility here in South Florida. It's kind of becoming a bit of a Gaza Strip down there with Chauvet, Roby, Martin, I think, still has a facility down here. Elation, of course, has their facility here in South Florida. So, yeah, it's definitely moving like heaven or hell, depending on which way you want to look at it, down here in South Florida. But really nice building. It was a great little party that they had. Albert Chauvet, of course, was there, very proud, and they had a band. They had some food. And also lots and lots of designers. And so I got to see a couple of recent people from the podcast who were on the podcast. Emily, who was just on a few weeks ago, I think, or a couple of weeks ago, she was there. Funny thing, first time I've ever met Emily in person. So I've known her since before COVID, I think, with all the Zoom calls we had and all kinds of stuff, but never met in person. So it was really cool. Cosmo, of course, was there as well. and yeah, some other people too. So Corey was there. So yeah, it was fun. It was cool. Nice opening. What else has happened in the last week or two? Again, some of the guests from our podcast. Again, Cosmo. His name keeps popping up, but he won Lighting Designer of the Year at the Live Production Summit, which happened a couple weeks ago, I think, in Palm Springs. And so, congratulations to Cosmo, very deserving lighting designer, very busy lighting designer. If his acts could stay out there, this is the problem when you have older acts, I guess. They start, they stop, they start, they stop. And so, congratulations to Cosmo again. Nobody deserves it more. The guy works his ass off, and just a super guy and great designer, very talented. And very close relation to Cosmo, one of his employers, Gateway Productions, won Video Company of the Year. So that was another interesting one. And again, past guest of the show. Lots of other friends won awards there. I think Upstaging might have got Trucking Company. I don't have them in front of me, sorry. And speaking of awards, another friend of the show and recent podcast recording, Rob Koenig from Metallica, of course, won the Nook Schoenfeld Lighting Designer of the Year Parnelli Award at the NAMM show this past weekend. So congratulations to Rob again. Deserves it heavily. It was a toughly contested category this year. Some really great designers in there. And so for Rob to pull that out was huge. Congratulations. And speaking of the NAMM show, yeah, a lot of people attended, of course, from our industry. I know I saw a lot of booths there, companies from our industry. I think Martin had a booth, Elation did, Chauvet did. Not sure who else, but of course, ACT. I think it was the first time they showed up with another. I don't think we've announced them yet, but they're coming. PK Sound is coming on as a sponsor. So PK Sound, for the first time showing at a NAMM show with ACT. They were together at LDI, but that's a lighting show more than a sound show, of course. Sorry to the folks from LDI that I said that, but so anyways, yeah, I mean, I heard it was a pretty good show. It was obviously well attended. NAMM always is. It's a weird show always because you have musicians walking around looking at guitars and drums and everything. It's a musician show and a music store show more than it is a lighting show or even a professional sound show, although sound is much more closely tied to NAMM than lighting is, even though as a lighting vendor, I've been going to NAMM since the 90s. I remember doing NAMM show booths, in the early 90s with Trackerman and Martin. And so you can't really say it's not a lighting show, but it's really not a lighting show. Like if you have 100,000 attendees at NAMM, there's probably 2,000 people that are interested or 5,000 people that are interested in lighting, and the rest are, and I'm sure I'm getting those numbers wrong, so I should just shut up. And then last on shows, ISE is this week in Barcelona. That has been a massively growing show over the last few years, especially. It's always been a good show, but over the last, I think since just before COVID, maybe 2017, 18 is when it really started booming. And now it's just a massive show. I think it's a lot bigger than Plaza, if I'm guessing correctly. Again, I'm probably stepping in poop now and saying the wrong thing, but it's a great show. It's a big show. I wish I was there, but unfortunately, I have to work and can't run around to trade shows my whole life. So on to today's guest. We have coming up Matt Guminski. So Matt is a good friend, great guy. Lots to talk about with Matt. Matt is a Boston, Massachusetts native and resident of Astoria, New York. He is a lighting and production designer, lighting director, programmer, and owner of MG Lighting Design. Matt holds a BFA in lighting design from Boston University. Throughout Matt's career, he has worked for various styles and sizes of shows, including theater, dance, industrial, corporate, and concert design and direction. So that's a lot, and I'm looking forward to talking with him. So let's bring on Matt. Matty GLD.
How are you, my friend?
And it's funny that I should call you that because everyone knows that that's your Instagram handle is
Yeah.
Matty GLD. And for the longest time, I thought, why the hell does he call himself Matty Gold? Like, what is that?
You're not the first person.
Why does he call himself Matty Gold? And then finally one day I went, duh, you know. But
Well, that goes way back to college. I was like getting ready to graduate from college, and I was like, I need a outside of my college email address, and I was like, what'll sound cool? And this is way before you do your first name dot last name, and
yeah.
it started on Hotmail. Like that's how long ago.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well,
it just kind of stuck.
I
So.
hate to tell you, but my so long ago goes before email. There was no email when my long ago happened. So you're still a youngin. But no, the whole
Well, thank you.
yeah, the whole Instagram handle thing is funny because our producer Sarah, of course, tagged the wrong Matt Guminski, and I think that's
Well, no,
caused.
it wasn't even a
So,
Mac
so,
Kaminsky. It was just a Guminski.
so are you and him dating now or something? Like now that you've
I
connected
don't
on
know.
Instagram, what's going on?
I don't know. No, it was actually funny because today, so when the pandemic started, we were actually Corey Easterbrook, Greek, Rob Koenig, a bunch of people. We formed this kind of so Emily Bornson,
Yeah.
we formed kind of a support group via iMessage. And we still have it. We still run it to this day. We bounce ideas off each other.
How,
It's
how
really,
do I
it's
how do I get in there? I just want to spam LDs all day. So I just want to come in and go, anybody need any, you know, hog fours or whatever? Yeah.
no, I mean, well, I'm sure they know how to get in touch with you. No worries
Yeah.
there.
No, I'm
But
kidding.
no, no, no. So today I'm sitting there. I wake up this morning and I get a text from Rob Gibson and in the group chat, and he was like, "So I guess I was following the wrong you on Instagram." And I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Uh,
And he's like, "Who's this Guminski K whatever? He loves to have his shirts off in his
oh
Instagram
no.
photos." And I was like, "That is definitely not me." And he sent
That's
the screenshot.
hilarious.
We were all laughing about it. It
Oh,
was
so
really
he
funny.
didn't come after you for like spamming his inbox or anything on.
No, 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 no,
Oh,
no, no,
okay.
no, no. But he's like, "I'm gonna follow this guy because I'm interested now." I was like,
You
"You can unfollow him." He's like, "No, no, no. This is gonna be a good story."
you want to hear something funny? So when I first started Gear Source, this is how long ago that was. I had I think it was an 800 number, or it might have just been my regular phone number. I don't remember, but whatever it was, I think it was 800 whatever, or it might have been 866 whatever. Anyways, whatever it
Mhm.
was, if you dialed like the 800 number instead of the 866 number or whatever, it went to a porn hotline. And you'll never guess who found it and told me was Marcia Stern.
Of
Marcia calls me and she
course.
goes, Marcel, did you know that if you call 800 instead of 866, you get like this hotline, this sex hotline thing? And I'm like, get the hell out of here. So of course I hung up on her and went and tried it, and it's like, you're so hot and all this stuff, right? It's like, whoa, that ain't
And
gonna
you're
sell
sitting
any
on there
gear.
being like, "I'm racking up all the minutes on here. My phone
Right.
bill's gonna be through the
Yeah,
roof."
no kidding, no kidding. But yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
so
funny.
funny that Marcia found it.
Yeah, Marcia found it. There was another one like that. I think it's WestJet in Canada, which is sort of like the
Mhm.
JetBlue in Canada, the discount airline or whatever.
We've all flown on it.
And I think, again, I think it's an 866 number. And if you call 800 instead of 866, you get like a sex line or something. I think it's the
those
exact same
still
problem I
those
had.
those still exist. That's kind of
Well,
crazy to
this
me.
was a few years ago when I heard about
Okay.
that one, and I went and tried it, and it was real. But yeah, so pretty wild.
Anyway,
So you were in
it
LA. You
happens.
went to. I'm kind of jealous. You went to the Parnellis, right?
Yeah, I went to Nam and the Parnellis. It was a lot of fun. It was beautiful. It was so nice to see all our industry together celebrating each other.
Hell yeah.
Um, Nicole from Felix, she brought in a table of all women and LGBTQ people. Roby had a table that they brought in a bunch of people. Gateway Studio. I mean, it went on. It was packed.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't walk 2 feet and without bumping into somebody you know.
Yeah,
And
I
it
think
was
it's
just, it was really great.
I think I remember hearing it sold out like a couple months in advance because I had a few
Hmm.
companies reach out to me and say, "Hey, do you need a seat? Because
Yeah.
it's sold out." And I
Have you
gotta
been?
admit,
Have
I've
you been
never
to like?
been to the Barnellis because every time when it was at LDI, every single year there was always something like I either had a client dinner that I had to be at, or a you know something, or it was the same night as upstaging's party, or something was
Yeah.
always wrong with why I couldn't go to the Parnellis. Plus, I hate wearing a suit, and I didn't really want to dress in a suit, so and you don't want to go there in jeans and a t-shirt and look like a schmuck, I guess. But
No, but I mean, at the same time, though, it's definitely an experience you have to go to,
yeah,
especially if there's a lifetime award winner that
I
or
know.
whatnot.
No, I
And
feel bad
Terry,
every year for missing it
yeah,
because I like all the people who get all the awards, right? So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was amazing watching Rob get his Metallica award. I'm so
yeah,
proud of him. He worked so hard on that show.
of course, yeah.
Um, and uh, and it was also, I there are a few other events that are great with this whole NAM association that I really like, and the one, I mean, my one issue with LDI is it's so expensive to go to these panels and take these classes, whereas with NAM it's fostering the education, right? So kids can pay, I think it's like $90, and they get access to all the classes throughout NAM for the week, which is amazing.
Right.
And there's some amazing panels. We had one that I went to is Richard Cadena. He did electrify the audience, not your performers, and it was talking about ground loops
Richard's
and
so good at
how,
that. He's
oh
so
my
good at.
god, it was
You see what
so
he's
good.
doing now with this whole paywall thing? Like he's got all of his he's got a lot of training and stuff behind one of the paywall services, which is so cool. I talked to him about it last week.
Listen, man, if he's putting it out there, he should make money on it
Hell
because
yeah.
and just the way that he educates people, it's so down to earth. It's so much fun. He's like, I'm going to show you videos of people electrocuting themselves. Don't worry, they all survived. And you're like, no way. And he would show it, and you see this guy freeze and shake, and smoke comes out of his head, and he's like, but don't worry, he gets up.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, he was on my podcast telling me those stories, and I remembered because I was a singer, believe it or not, and I
oh no
remembered
way.
so many times going like this up to the mic and going, and you know,
Well, I mean, the main thing that I found really interesting is, when you're on tour, you hear backline people say, "Oh, that 60 cycle hum. I'm just gonna throw a ground lift on it," and that's what causes
of
these
course,
problems.
yeah. Well,
And
we
it's
never
like
even
that's
threw.
how you're gonna.
Back in my day, you didn't have like these fancy ground lifts. You just bent the plug off. Okay, let's make it a two pronger. You know,
He would kill you
Of
if he
course he
heard that.
would. Of course he would. You know how many times I've done that in my life though? Like 1,000. I mean,
uh,
it's
I mean, we all have.
it's just what you did when you didn't have the stuff. It was always funny
Yeah.
too because I was always that guy in the band where the band elected me the one to hook up to the 220 supply in the wall or whatever. And so, you'd yell over to the bartender, "Hey, is this shut off?" "Yep, yep, it's off." you know,
Definitely wasn't.
yeah, oh yeah, no. Was that on purpose? No, no, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Yeah, me too. But so did you
I
do
didn't
a
know you were a
course?
singer. That's kind of amazing.
It's a funny story. So I'll tell it quickly because it's a funny
Yeah,
story, and I don't
please.
think I've ever told this story on the podcast. But I was in sixth grade, and I went to church one week. I was Catholic. I went to church with my family, and there was a little ad up saying band looking for a singer at the church, and rock band play all the latest rock and roll stuff, looking for a singer. Audition to audition, call so and so or whatever, right? And so I called, and the manager who answered the phone was a Catholic priest, and he was the priest from our church. And he said, "Yeah, the band rehearses in the basement of the church, but they play at regular gigs. They're a rock band." And so he set me
Not
up
like
for
a
an audition.
Not like a Catholic Christian rock, nothing like
Well,
like
so hang
actual
on a
rock.
sec. So I went and auditioned and I got the gig. And so to pay for the rehearsal space, basically, the band every I can't remember if it was one Saturday a month or every second Saturday or whatever, we played this thing called the Rock Mass. And um it was like, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night or something on Saturday nights, and it was packed with like teenagers, right? Just like literally kids that never went to church were all of a sudden packing this church, standing room only. And so this priest's assistant was a German lady, and she was translating these German Christian rock songs. This was prior to Striper or what was the other big one? Petra. It was prior to all these big Christian rock bands. And so we were playing these really heavy German rock songs translated to English. And, we'd do this once a month or whatever, and that paid for our rehearsal space. And from there, we'd go out and do gigs. We had a song on the radio at one point. And so,
Amazing.
so yeah, but I started out as the singer, and then one day at practice, the priest fires our bass player and hands me a bass guitar and says, "Here, learn to play. You got 4 weeks till our next gig or whatever," right? So I had to learn like 40 songs on a instrument that I'd never
Oh
played
man.
before. I played a tiny bit of guitar, like just goofing around at home or whatever, but so yeah, I went and took bass lessons and learned, dong 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 dong, like the most basic bass stuff I could. And then over time, I really got into playing the bass, and I got kind of good at it. And I decided I wanted to be a bass player. I didn't want to be a singer. I was a bass player singer for a long time, and then I started taking gigs as just a bass player and some background vocals, but that was about it. And then I just decided that, I was on the road making $200 a week, but my bar tab was 250. And so I needed a job. So I went and got a job in a music store, and that led to lighting and onward. So
There you
that's my
go.
life story.
Well, I knew we were kindred spirits. I too play bass. I just
Ah,
haven't had a chance to play in a very long time because I've been on the road.
ah,
Um,
I
but
didn't
that's
know that.
actually how, yeah. That's kind of, it was one of those things in high school where I was like, man, I want to, in middle school, we had to do like the band, right? And I was that obnoxious kid that's like, I want to play the snare drum. So literally, I would take a snare drum, bring it home, and do like
Oh God,
just a snare drum, not a full kit, a snare drum. And my parents were like,
I
"That's
would
it."
kill you. I would kill you.
And
Snare drum.
think like a sixth, seventh, eighth grader, like
Yeah,
hopped up on sugar, being like.
that's
So when I went to
crazy.
high school, I mean, also like when it came to music, I always just kind of heard the bass line. Like it always kind of had a more forward uh, sound to me in
Yeah.
music in the songs. So so one day I left high school, freshman year of high school. I went to Guitar Center and I got a PV, a crappy $150 PV bass, and I was like, and I just started futzing around with it, and just kind of became something I like to do. And I think I could never read sheet music, but
Me neither.
I could always hear it
Me too.
and replicate it.
Yeah.
So being able to do that helped me with my musicality going forward in the lighting career, starting in theater where I started, but ultimately carrying over to concert touring and
Yeah.
other.
I mean, I think bass and drums, like I've known a lot of LDs who were either part time for fun drummers or were drummers before they became LDs or whatever. And
Mhm.
I think, obviously being part of the rhythm section really, obviously gives you some better timing and stuff. And I think it fits, like you
Mhm.
like that sort of changing thing, and like you said, sort of forward. Um, so yeah, I mean, but I fell into it. I mean, he literally fired the guy and handed me a bass guitar and said, "Learn to play it." And you know, later on in life, like today, I probably own two bass guitars, maybe three bass guitars, I can't remember, and about 10 guitars. And so
Nice.
if I ever pick up something to just goof around, it's usually an electric guitar, sometimes an acoustic guitar.
Well, it's always hard, like, to pick up like, I have I have a trainer bass cab in my office, which is
Oh,
probably the
wow.
worst place. It's 218s.
Yeah.
But
I have a Trainer
it's
218 bass cabinet. Like
oh, do you really?
boom, boom, boom.
Oh my god.
Boomy.
And I have a Schecter 5 string, and
Oh,
that low
nice.
B, oh my god, when you hit that, it rattles. Like,
Yeah,
my
those
neighbors are
pictures
like,
fall off the wall behind you. Yeah.
but I mean, you hit it on the head. It's kind of like, I feel like to be a good concert lighting this or just lighting designer that's dealing with music, to have a rhythm section, a background is going to
That's
just
helpful.
serve you.
Yeah.
It's going to serve you so much.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm so good at. I feel like I'm very good at busking shows
Yeah.
because I know I can follow the drummer and I know where the song is going to go. It's just a feeling that I have. So.
So, I know this is a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I always see these busking competitions and stuff at LDI, but what is
Mhm.
busking a show? Because I mean, I know what a busker is, a street performer or whatever. So is
Sure.
busking basically just walking up and doing lights?
Well, I mean, it's you don't have anything programmed. I mean, you have
Yeah.
your punt page programmed. I mean, Emily, in your podcast with her, she talks about when she does, shows, she's
Yeah.
playing the lights like, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're playing the lights like a member of the band,
Hmm.
except you don't have anything programmed. You're just, when you push a button, it's going to strobe. When you move that fader up, it's going to do something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of just
It's kind of like jamming.
what, yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. It's just a
Yeah.
freestyle form. And, honestly, like when I first started with the Cult, uh, that was all it was. It was, you don't have a lighting rig. You can bring a console if you want, uh, but you're not going to have time to program anything. We're not going to production rehearsals. We're just hitting the road. We're going.
And you're using
And
house
I just
lights
set up.
wherever you go.
Yeah, and then depending on where the venue is, if they don't have anything, we would advance a light plot, something basic. But um, yeah, it would literally be rolling up in the entire day. On my first tour with the Cult, I was just every day building up and building up more my punt file. So by the end of it, I just had everything accessible to me, and knowing the music at that point. I mean, again, being a musician, I can pick up music really quickly. So if I hear a song 2 or 3 times, I know the structure, I know where fills are going, I know
Yeah.
the direction it's going, and then I find it becomes a little more cohesive. So I know that this song is going to be blue and gold with some white accent hits, and I'll start to be able to replicate that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So going backwards here a little bit, back to NAM. Did you do
Mhm.
training at NAM? Because I know you
Uh,
do a bunch of hog training, right?
yeah, no, at NAM they didn't have. I don't think they had any console train. They might have had ACT, might have had some MA,
Yeah.
but honestly, this year I was really kind of disappointed at NAM. Not at NAM, but it just, there weren't a lot of vendors that we had in previous years. And I get it, ISE is going on. We
Yeah.
just had LDI,
Yeah.
but like the idea of NAM as a kind of crossroads. It kind of sets it up that it would be a perfect show for our industry because you have your artists doing endorsement deals, your tour managers are there, your production managers are there. So instead of sending them a YouTube clip or like a website to go check out about a new product you might want to use on a tour, want to take them over to the booth, show them the fixture. You have
It's
a
a good thought.
vendor.
It's a nice
Yeah, I
thought,
mean,
but in reality, like, it's just not the core audience. And so it's funny because I talked about this on the intro. NAM, I've been literally doing booths at the NAM show since 1992. And that
sure.
was when I was early with Martin's distributor Trackerman. And, I remember we used to be in the exit of the convention center that faced towards right towards the Hilton Lounge.
Yep.
And this was back in the day when the Hilton Lounge was like manic. It was just
Hmm.
complete mayhem in there as soon as the show ended. And But so, we were right by the exit. And I remember one day Eddie Van Halen walking in and coming to our booth and going, "Whoa, this stuff's pretty cool." And I mean, this is like 1993 or something, right? And he's like, "This stuff's pretty cool. What's going on here?" And, I'm like, it's Eddie Van Halen. And he's asking me questions about lights. What do I do? And
You answer him. You
had
answer
a
him.
15-minute conversation with Eddie Van Halen about moving lights, right? It was so cool. But
That's so
what we
awesome.
always counted on was like the music store from the Midwest somewhere who just tripped over your booth and went, "Oh, I've been meaning to get into lighting." But like the way I described it on the intro, I don't know what the attendance was this year, but I mean, I think it's usually around 100,000 people at NAM or whatever over the 4 days.
200,000. I mean, but the thing is, they come from all over the world. Like you
But
get people from Africa there,
yeah,
from Eastern Europe, and
yeah,
it's you get House of Worship people, you have your DJ people. The I think 2019 or 2020, right before we got locked down, there we had a NAM show, and it was because it's in January,
yeah,
and I want to say that was, I think, the biggest showing. Like we had, Chevet was there. Chevet was kind of always there. They weren't there this
yeah,
year, but Elation had a pretty big booth. American DJ, SGM, GLP. They were all there, and Four Wall was actually there doing their used lighting thing,
yeah. Hmm.
and they had a good amount of sales from what I was told.
Hmm.
They actually gave like a 10% discount so they could track their sales and see if it was worth it.
Yeah,
And they said in a week, DJs coming up wanting to buy like LED pars, or
yeah.
they ended up doing really, really well. And then the pandemic hit, and then that just kind of, I think, any forward momentum that we got coming up that way kind of just.
Yeah, but here's the problem. So, let's imagine I don't know what some really expensive shopping would be in New York, but like the equivalent of what is it, Madison Avenue or something like that.
Fifth Avenue, or yeah,
Fifth
yeah,
Avenue. Yeah, something like that. So imagine putting a store there on Fifth Avenue where you know that only about 3% or 2% of the traffic walking by is even remotely interested in your product, because you're a bit of a strange product for that industry or that market or whatever, right?
yeah. Hmm.
That's what NAM is to lighting companies. It's not their core audience. About
Hmm.
95% of the people coming to that show have no interest whatsoever in lighting. So you're spending big money, the same money that a guitar company or an amplifier company or a drum company would be spending for the 95% audience. You're spending for the 5% audience. And so it's not always the greatest value. Like you're just looking for that accidental deal that trips over you or whatever. But, I talked to several manufacturers. They said it was busy, but it was like me. It wasn't
Yeah.
incredible from a business
I just
standpoint or anything.
I just see, like, there's just some energy to NAM that, like, I like LDI, don't get me wrong. One of the
Yeah.
things I like about LDI is just seeing all my friends who I haven't seen in a year. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go to a lot of LDIs in recent years, or in past years, because the time.
Work. Yeah.
It's always right in the middle of touring.
Yeah.
And it's weird because everyone goes, the people, the audience is actually coming to NAM. They're just coming for the Parnellis.
Yeah.
Like, if you knew the industry, that the amount of people in our industry that were in that room, like, okay, like, why not set it up, make the investment, and really push to make it worthwhile to have, Rob Koenig was like, the Metallica production team was there. People would love to sell product to those guys.
Yeah.
You had young aspiring talent there that would love to get their hands on some of this stuff. And really, the only representation was SGM had a booth, GLP had a booth, ADJ had a booth, and everything else was like Chinese knockoff,
Well,
which
yeah,
was
but let
that
me
was
put it to you
interesting.
this way, Matt. So a booth the size of an ACT or a Robe at
Oh,
LDI.
Act
Let's
was
talk
actually
about
Act was
LDI.
actually there too. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about LDI. A booth the size of Robe or Act, they're spending almost $1 million
Gosh.
on that booth. And so that's not something that you can do lots and lots of times. Generally, you're not going to make back anywhere near your investment on orders that you get at that show. So you're really investing in the year of business, not just in that show of business. And NAM, probably for me, the first few years we did it, it worked out pretty well because we were one of very few lighting companies there. And like I said, the old music store from the Midwest somewhere was tripping over us and going, yeah, I want some of that stuff in my store. I want to sell some club
Yeah,
lights or whatever, right?
yeah,
And this was early in the industry. And now, though, everyone has access to these products. Those companies are not really there to meet with lighting companies. They're there to
yeah.
meet with their top guitar vendors or whatever vendors. So I don't know. Like, I
I get
wish
it.
it
I
would
get
work. I wish it would work
it. Me too.
because it should, and, but it's just such a big investment and it's right after LDI. And I don't know if it'll ever work, but I wish it would because I love the
Yeah,
NAM show. I went to a whole bunch of NAM shows as a music vendor before I ever did it as a lighting company. And then I did it for 10 years as a lighting company too. So,
no,
yeah,
it's just I like the energy. I like seeing the people that I wouldn't normally see.
yeah,
Walking by a giant drum circle. That's pretty cool.
that's very
you
cool.
know,
Well,
I like the sense of community,
in the
but I
Wayback,
totally hear what you're saying.
yeah, I'll go back to the Wayback Machine. So when I first started going as a music company, I was, I mean, this is well before you were born, I think. So this was like the early to mid '80s was the first time I went to the NAM show. Probably '83, '82 was my first NAM show, and
I was one. I was one.
yeah, there you go. So I remember there would be times when I'd be standing at the bank of payphones talking to my girlfriend, and I'd be like, whoa, there's, Joe Satriani. Whoa, there's Eddie
Yeah,
Van Halen. Whoa, there's so and so, whoever, right? And it was just all mini skirts and rock stars. It was such a fun show, and then party at the Hilton Lounge across the
yeah,
street afterwards,
yeah,
and then you'd go out to local clubs and see just the craziest huge bands playing at these clubs, or they'd have these throw togethers where it's, Van Halen and Seymour Duncan and Leslie West from Mountain and like just all these people that are jamming, and you're just like, wow, this is
yeah,
so cool to experience this.
yeah.
It was fun.
I mean, it is cool. It is cool because I did get to see some people that I tour with.
Yeah,
The audio guys, some musicians. So it was,
it's a cool
it.
show.
I got my yeah. I got my 2 days of awesome
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Parnelli love.
Yeah, no,
so
that's awesome. That's awesome. Hopefully you'll be on the Parnelli list soon. So keep
we'll
working
see.
hard, young feller.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
speaking of
thanks, Dad.
speaking of being young, you're part of a younger generation who, uh, I always talk about on this podcast how people got into the business and the fact that it's usually just a real weird lucky thing where you're sitting at a pub and some guy next to you works for some big band or something and says, hey, you want a job? I need a guy to do this or whatever, right? And next thing you
Yeah.
know, you're a touring guy and you've made a 40-year career out of it. But you're part of a younger generation who was actually able to study lighting design. And I
hmm
think you did that at Boston University, right?
Yep. Yep. I went there for theater. Yeah. I was there 1999 to 2003. It was great. It's this industry, the best way to describe it is this industry found me because I didn't get into this until high school where I was looking for something. I went to a new high school. I wanted to do something different. So I joined the football team, right? So we played, and then after football was done, I was like, "What am I gonna do with myself? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just bored." So I walked by one day, saw a poster for Dracula that my school was doing, and I went to go see it, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Because it was a school where they actually invested in the arts still, and joined the stage crew and just started building sets, painting sets, and Then I had the option in my junior and senior year to start taking, more classes basically. So I took, costume design, masks and makeup, scenic design, lighting design, and it just kind of stuck. I just really was like getting an inkling for lighting. I was passionate about it. And we were getting ready to do a festival where we were having a bunch of schools come and compete. And the lighting designer for the school at the time got sick. And my teacher was like, well, you're up.
Oh,
So
wow.
basically, I got bumped into that, got put in a high pressure situation, knocked it out of the park. And then at that point, I was like, this is really what I want to do. So at that point, I was applying to colleges, didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. And then at that point, I was like, I want to go for lighting design. So applied to BU, BC, Holy Cross, mostly like Northeast schools. Got into BU, and that was the best thing that could have happened to me. I got in at a school that had a major regional theater where we were getting Broadway lighting designers coming in and designing shows. I got to assist them. I got to watch them in their process. I got to focus lights for them, which was, it's amazing. Um, Fast forward, graduated college, and then just immediately hit the ground running. Started like sending resumes. I mean, I really didn't have much of a resume. I had my college stuff and some
Hmm.
stuff I was doing over the summer, but just sent my resume out and was like begging people to hire me. Eventually, I got calls and I worked on shows and I built up a resume and my name got out there. But one thing I will say about theater is that it just doesn't pay well. Like
Yeah.
you would spend 3 months on a show and get $500. Like
Yeah.
that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And if there's one good thing the pandemic taught us is knowing your self worth, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what you're worth and what a living wage is. Well, we didn't do that. Like I would go from one gig, open a show, get in my car, pound a Red Bull, drive 4 hours to Vermont to design another show that I spent 3 days sleepless tacking a show, then drive home, have one day off, do my laundry, go someplace. It was just, at one point I was doing 35, almost 35, 40 shows a year, which is basically I was in tech almost every week of
Yeah.
that year.
And
It's
making
just
no
not,
money.
it's not, and making enough to survive, to pay your rent, put gas in the car, and eat. I mean,
Why though? Why
that's basically
why
it.
why do you have to leave theater and go to like, corporate or rock and roll to make any money?
Well, it's so if you look at it, right? So if you look at let's look at conservatory, right? Let's say a B or A lister lighting director is making somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 a week, right?
Yeah.
That's a week.
Yeah.
You would, if you were lucky, doing a major regional theater and spending at this point, like the rates have changed obviously with inflation, but at this point, like if you're going to do a Broadway show or a Lort B, you're going to probably be making $4,000 to $5,000 for the show, and that's about you know anywhere from 4 to 6 month commitment with production meetings, reading scripts, drafting your light plots, talking to shops. It's just it
That's
and
crazy.
ultimately what you're doing, it's crazy. Ultimately, like you would hope that you have multiple ones going on at the same time. So like you have your meeting and then you're going into tech and it just it layers out that way. But when you're only making $500, trust me, I would like go to New York City to work on an off Broadway show just to get an off Broadway show credit where I'm getting $250 because that's all the producer
But
had to pay me. But
is that because of the economics of a theater show? Like or did someone just, did you just get shoved down the line to where, everybody gets
well, I
paid
think
before the tech crew?
no, I think I mean, even actors, you look at actors, they don't get paid nearly what they're worth. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why these summer stock theaters, these kids are making, maybe 150, $200 a week, but they're getting housing provided and they're getting to do their art. That's kind of the selling
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not, listen, I love theater, and I'm actually getting ready to do a theater show in about a month. I'm doing Beautiful, the Carole King musical,
Oh,
because I can. Being able, coming from a theater background, it allowed me to kind of train my eyes to be able to work in multiple disciplinary things within lighting.
yeah.
So, like, I could do concert touring, I could do corporate, I can do fashion, I can do, my my skill set is such that I'm not just, I came up into this industry being educated. So I think that really helped me to be able to diversify my strengths within
That's
lighting. So
important.
it's
Yeah.
not absolutely. And I think, it's different. You get some kids now, they're coming in, they go to school, they get like a basic tech theater education. And, a lot of things that are, a lot of companies like cruise ships are really hunting to find people. So they're getting these young kids in and kind of shaping them in a certain way. Same thing goes with shops. You get these kids coming in coiling cables, and then magically they get the opportunity to be like an L3
Yeah.
on a major tour.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's just the hustle. It's just whatever you need to
So,
do to hustle and
so
learn,
is theater
and it'll
still
get
like,
you there.
is theater still like your, main love that you'd love to go back to when you have the opportunity? Is it that kind of a
Yeah.
thing, or is it just another gig?
Uh, no, I mean, nothing for me is ever just a gig.
Yeah.
Even when it comes down to corporate, because I care too much. Even if my name is like, nobody's going to know who designed this, I
Yeah.
just I just care too much, like to just be like, it's fine.
I don't think you can care too much. I think it's a good thing, and that's what keeps you getting hired
Yeah,
is when you care and people know that you give a
yeah,
shit, right?
yeah. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, for me, whenever I can, like, there was a good chunk of time that I didn't do theater because I was just focused. I was like, the concert touring stuff is just coming in. I was,
Hmm.
2008, 18. I was lighting director on Evanescence. 2019, I was, got into lighting directing and Alice in Chains, and then that kind of folded over to where it was kind of a design. It was a very gray, muddy area on that. But it was all this stuff. It just kept coming. Phone calls kept coming, opportunities kept coming, and trust me, there were theaters that reached out to me and said, "Can you do this show?" And I tried to make it work, and it's I think in the last 6 years, I've probably done about 6 to 10 theater shows, which I like it. I want to keep doing it. It is a passion of mine, but I still love being at front of house and hearing the go house lights go for show, the
Such
lights
an
blacking
energy.
out, the
Yeah.
crowd just going
Yeah.
insane,
Yeah.
and getting those butterflies in my stomach. Oh, it's one of the best. It's better than drinking. I don't do drugs, but it's better than like that
Whatever you
drug.
do,
It's just, you
don't
chase
say it's
that.
better than
Yeah.
sex, because I know you have a girlfriend now, and that could cause you some issues. Don't say that. Shh.
It's not. It's not.
Zip. Yeah. Zip it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. No, it's just it's I just love what we do. It's
yeah.
just it's such a great.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, I've never been an LD who has stood at the console and, called cues and called house lights out or whatever, but I've been standing front of house and been part of that. And it's even exciting for me watching, and praying that whatever lights that I sold to that production work, they come on when he calls that cue or whatever, right?
Oh,
But
absolutely.
so your first tour, I think tours that you did were actually theater tours, not rock and roll tours, right?
Yeah. My first tour was I was the lighting designer for the Moscow Ballet,
Oh,
which
wow.
was kind of an amazing experience. I worked as a house LD at, some people on your podcast would know, South Shore Music Circus in up in Boston, just South Shore. I was also the house LD at Hampton Beach Casino Ballroom, a couple of venues in Boston, and one of the production managers of South Shore Music Circus. It's a summer venue, so in the winter nobody is working. So
Right.
he got a job at with this company in Western Mass that are producers for the Moscow Ballet, and he said, "Hey, you're a great LD. Do you want to come out and do this?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do."
That's
So
cool.
that was kind of a baptism by fire. I was basically on the road from end of September through New Year's, and we were touring two different shows. We were doing Sleeping Beauty and the Nutcracker, and we went everywhere from Regina,
Rhymes with
to
fun.
to yeah. I mean, and it was like a rock and roll tour. We never did a sit down. It was 6 a.m. load-ins, two show days sometimes. Pack it all up into the truck, move on. So trust me, I definitely learned. I cut my teeth in touring that way.
Did you
And
tour
then
on
after,
buses at that time though?
yeah, funny story. Our tour bus on the Moscow Ballet tour was the Hanson Mbop tour bus in their music
No
video
way.
that
That's hilarious.
they're shooting the water guns out of the windows. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Uh yeah, it was
So,
pretty funny.
so let me ask you because I'm really curious, and it's another stupid Marcel question, but um, living on a tour bus for a ballet different than living on a tour bus for the cult?
Well, so we did we the no, not really. Like we still have our crew members. We had a stage manager, lighting, sound, merch,
I just feel like the people
some
would be so much more cultured, on a ballet tour than a rock and roll tour. Like less
no, I mean,
drugs,
because
less nonsense, less of all the bad stuff.
I think the worst we did was smoke pot. Like, and we
Yeah,
we would drink. Like,
yeah,
but it wasn't like I don't think we really had time to party our face off. Like,
yeah.
you want to talk about grueling? I think we had maybe 4 days off that entire run. One of
Oh,
them was
Jesus.
Thanksgiving. One of them was
Ouch.
Christmas. But we did
Wow.
actually. We had a great time. We convinced our production manager to route our bus to Key West for Christmas. We
Oh,
parked
cool.
up in an RV slot, and basically for Christmas dinner we caught fish and grilled them on the beach. It was
No
pretty neat.
way. That's awesome.
Yeah, it
That
was
is
pretty
awesome.
cool.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, a roadie is a roadie, even if they're theater roadies,
I know. I again,
it was fun.
stupid Marcel question, but I
It's not
just
it's not a
wanted to ask
stupid
because,
question.
well, I've always been intrigued by the idea of a tour bus, with eight of your closest friends in bunks and stuff, but because I've never done it. Like I've toured with
Mhm.
bands as a band member, but I never made it to the point of a tour bus. We were in like a school bus with the gear in the back and the people in the front. And, you either slept on speaker cabinets in the back or you slept on a seat in the front. And that was about, as fancy as touring got for me. But
Yeah.
so that first tour, did you go, oh yeah, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, because I liked the waking up in a different city, but it was the same task. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
we got to do the same thing, we got to achieve the same goal, but it's a different four walls every day. You're dealing with a different crew.
Yeah.
So at a very young age, I got a temperament for being able to work with stagehands. And when you're walking into local two, local three, local one here,
Yeah.
as a young kid, and you're the head electrician slash lighting designer,
Yeah.
and you're talking to these guys that have 40 years on you and are gruff. You learn how to play. You know the rules. You know when to push, and you
Yeah.
know when to you know what hill to die on. Basically,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
learn that really quick.
That's
So
that's
I think
yeah, that's a good point.
so. I think at a young age, like being able to do that was, I think I started when I was doing that. It was I want to say it was like 26, 27. So I didn't start touring as a kid. Um,
Yeah.
but I did learn, baptism by fire. Like I
Yeah.
didn't have that shop work. I didn't have that experience. Like I'd always wanted to go concert touring. Like I would go see like Dave Matthews Band concerts. Like they were my like Grateful Dead when I was a kid, right? So
Yeah.
I would go to like you know, 200 shows, and I'd always be like, oh man, this lighting is so cool, I would love to do this.
You know
And
who my
you
Grateful
know,
Dead was? Grateful
who?
Dead.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm old. No, I was
No,
never a
I
Grateful
was.
Dead guy. I was never a weed guy, so I didn't get the
Yeah,
Grateful Dead. You know, it just didn't like. I loved Supertramp. I loved more. I don't
hmm,
know. Just I loved bands that I thought were good musicians and stuff, and
sure,
made a really nice polished sound and stuff. I didn't like jam
of
bands.
course.
I'd never been a
Nah,
Dave
it's okay.
Matthews fan. Was never really a Black Crowes fan. Was never really a Counting Crows fan. Like all these jam bands just never really did anything for me.
And that's the beauty of it. Like, you
Yeah,
don't need to
that's why
like
there's
everything that's out
lots.
there.
That's why there's lots of different stuff. So
Yeah.
you've tour. What was your first rock and roll tour?
Okay, so it was Neon Trees back in 2011, 2012.
Oh, so really
Um,
recent
yeah, I mean, yeah, I
ish,
would
recent
say,
ish.
yeah, I mean, 10 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it was, working at Hampton Beach Casino Ballroom, working at, all these other places, being where I mastered my punting craft.
Yeah.
Bands would be like, "Oh wow, those lights were actually, it's like we're carrying our own lighting person. Give me your card." So I handed out cards left, right, and center. And one person, a friend of mine now, basically said, "This band's looking for an LD. Are you interested? Like, they're coming to Boston in 4 days. Can you meet them at Paradise and see if it's a good fit?" Went there, talked to the lead singer, talked to a couple of the members of the band, walked around with the production manager, just kind of trying to, he was feeling me out as production managers do.
Hmm.
And, the next morning I got a phone call saying, we want to replace this guy. We want you in. Can you be in Norfolk at the Norva in 2 days? And I was
Who'd
like,
you replace?
okay. Uh,
You don't have to tell me
that's
if you don't want to. All right.
I can't say that. I can't
It's
say
all good.
that. It was just, he was an older gentleman. This was a younger band, and their just aesthetics didn't clash. They
Yeah,
clashed. They didn't meld and blend together.
it happens.
Having somebody within their age range that has an aesthetic that could really push things. The challenge to that was, back then we didn't have previs. Previs is a relatively new
Yeah.
thing. So, and he was on a Avo, I want to say, and I'm by no means like the killer Avo guy. And I was like, can I get my own console? And at that time, Hog 3 was still out there. Hog 4 had not existed yet. So I got myself a Hog 3 and literally day one set up the floor package the way I wanted the floor package to be set up. It wasn't prepped properly, so I had to re-prep it. And then I just sat down and started programming. And I probably got through 5 songs, and then the rest of the show I just punted. And then each day I would set up, program a little bit
A little bit
more,
more. Yeah.
punt what I didn't have, and just kind of built the show as I went. And unfortunately, that was a reoccurring theme for me. I a lot of my friends called me the doctor because several bands, in this time period, would call me to fix shows. They hired a young kid who didn't know what they were doing or whatever, so I would be brought in, and I'd have to redesign the show from scratch. So I got really good at that.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
previs, just going in there and slinging
That's a
some
good
stuff.
thing, though.
So
That's a really good thing.
yeah,
I mean, you know, I think guys like Cosmo have done so great at just being adaptable and
mhm,
like Cosmo when he first came on my podcast, he said, I just say yes and then I figure it out. I say yes to everything and I figure it
yeah,
out. And that's it's a
yeah,
good attitude to have. And this fix it doctor guy is also a really good thing. It's I think it's good to become known as a guy who can come in and solve some problems and fix some stuff and make you
yeah,
happy.
yeah.
So
I mean, and even if it's, you would hope it would be a long term thing. Like, you come in, you fix it, they're happy with it. I remember the first night another band I worked for, Mr. Wives.
yeah.
I met them at Boston Calling, and 4 days later they were like, "Hey, are you available? And we'd like you to come out and replace this, this person. He's just young. He didn't. he didn't prep any of his looms. Everything was loose cable. So when you would open up the trunk, it would be just like a stinger. And you're just like, what is going on here?
Oh my
So the
goodness.
load ins would take 8 hours, and
Ugh.
it was not good. So, the first night that I did the show, like you take your shower, you're getting on the bus, getting ready to roll, and the guitar player, like, he knew I was there because I was above him, and he just flew open the curtain of the bunk, and he was like, this photo is amazing. You make me look like a god." And I was like, that's the best compliment you could get, right?
Oh, there you go.
That there's in one night, one show that, they're happy with it.
That's cool.
So, and you hope that that relationship continues and you get to keep working with those bands.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I mean,
yeah,
you did some cool stuff. Maroon 5, Evanescence, uh,
I
you
was
know.
lighting director on Maroon 5. That was a Demphis design.
Yeah.
Um, way back in the day. That was the first time I got to meet and work with Joe Cabrera. That was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I had to learn MA for that, so I knew just enough MA to be dangerous.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Wow, I forgot about Memphis.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a sad one. Um,
yep, absolutely.
so how'd you get into the cult? How'd that happen?
So the tour manager for the Cult used to tour manage Alice in Chains, and we were wrapping up the Alice in Chains Rainier Fog tour in 2019, and uh, I'm trying to remember who. I think it was actually like Court Lawrence. Actually, I think recommended, like, he wasn't available, and he reached out to me or put out feelers, and somebody recommended me because they knew my tour was coming to an end,
Hmm.
and put me in touch with the tour manager. The tour manager had actually, a couple of years earlier, stopped tour managing Alice in Chains, so he was like, "Okay, we have that connection."
Yeah.
And I took over Alice in Chains from Marty Postma. He was like, "I love Marty Postma," so we got that bond going. And then
Mm,
basically we would talk on the phone, and it was a European tour, and they were ultimately looking for or a UK tour. Ultimately, they were trying to find a UK designer so they didn't have to pay for flights,
right.
because it was a small tour. It's only like 2.5 weeks. And he was like, so after about, like, I want to say 5 phone conversations, he was like, "What's preventing me from hiring you?" And I was like, "A plane ticket." And he was like, "You're in. All right, we're getting you a flight, and we'll see you in 3 weeks."
That's
So,
hilarious.
I mean, it's sometimes you got to work for it, but when
And
you
when
work
was
for
that?
it, it
What
pays
what
off.
year was that?
2019, so the fall
Oh,
of
you've been with the
2019.
cult for a long time then, for 4 or 5
Yeah.
years.
Well, I mean, we did have that
Oh yeah,
three
yeah,
year pause,
yeah,
but
yeah. But you came right back with them after it, right? They didn't
yeah,
find
yeah,
somebody
I think,
during COVID to bump you,
yeah, no.
so that's good.
I mean, the thing is, I really, in that camp, like, it's there are different dynamics, right? And there are a lot of people who are listening to this podcast that have probably worked with that band and know the dynamics within that band. But there's something about, like, yes, it can get stressful. Yes, it can get confusing because one person is saying one thing and another person is saying another. But the thing that I've always discovered with that band is there's just something about when they're playing and when you're doing your show. I have never had more fun in my life lighting a band than lighting the Cult.
Yeah,
There's something about it. They're that old school rock band that doesn't play the tracks, and while they might flub a note here or there every once in a while,
I'd rather hear them live.
especially after the pandemic, they are playing and they sound like 30 years ago.
Wow.
It's absolutely amazing. And the energy that they give on stage every night is just it's just amazing.
So when
Like,
when you
some
talk
of
about
that,
a dynamic, is that like Ian Asbury and what's the other guy's name? Like they don't get
Billy,
along well or
Billy.
something?
No, no, they do. It's just, Ian has the thing that I like about Ian is he is an artist,
Yeah,
like, through and through. Like, we will get into deep conversations about, design concepts. Like, his big influences are like Nine Inch Nails and Bauhaus, right?
yeah.
So he keeps sending me. So we're on a tour where we have this big sepia backdrop that's a mountain and it has the Sonic Temple logo on it, right?
Hmm.
And he keeps sending me these Bauhaus Nine Inch Nail photos and says, "I want my show to look like that." And I said, "Okay." Uh, what is the overarching theme that you're seeing in all of these photos, that's really that you want? And he goes, you clearly have the answer to this. Why don't you just tell me? And I said, negative space. There's darkness. There's black. There's like an infinite infinitesimal amount of space back there, and it just goes. Meanwhile, we have a backdrop that even when you completely black out the stage, you could still see it. So, that at least got us into a conversation where I could production design, and we then started we got rid of that backdrop, and we brought in this. We went to rent. I went to Rent What, and got this amazing backdrop. It was called Black Camo Chaos, and it looks like an old Austrian drape, and it's made out of tank camo netting, and it's painted in
Oh,
pewters
cool.
and blacks and grays, and it's all swagged, so it looks very gothic. But when you turn the lights off or you don't light it, it completely goes away. So you just have this infinite blackness back there. And from that moment, we were able to really start crafting a design for this band that I wasn't competing with this sepia toned backdrop that really didn't, to me, didn't really speak to what this band was anymore. I feel like
Yeah.
they've evolved into like going, they're technically a goth band, right? Goth
Yeah.
rock or whatever. But I still see them as like they're, especially like the hits that they play doesn't seem very gothy to me. Like
Yeah.
Firewoman,
Yeah.
She Sells Sanctuary. That stuff is,
Yeah.
to me, that's rock and roll. That's like
Yeah.
80s rock,
Uh,
80s, 90s rock. But what we just did, this 40th anniversary of Death Cult, where it was all the Dreamtime record, where it's like 83rd Dream, Dreamtime, Christians, like all that stuff. That is the sound, that like new wave, post punk goth sound. That like when they say they're goth, I'm like, yes, that is 100% goth.
yeah.
And we were able to really achieve some cool stuff on this last
So
tour.
let me ask
So
you, because I was, I was a minor Cult fan, I would say, but I didn't know about this Death Cult thing. And when I first saw you going out to tour with Death Cult, I'm like, is this the same band or what is it? And so I Googled it, and so that was the original version of the Cult, right? Was called
yes,
Death
well,
Cult.
there was Southern. Yeah, it was Southern Death Cult Southern Death Cult was the first iteration, and then some members fell off. I believe that was Ian's original band.
Right.
Then Billy came in, and then they created, they basically dropped the Southern and just named it Death Cult, and that's kind of like where they found their sound. And they did one album, uh, which was this Death Cult stuff, and then basically they dropped the Death and just became the Cult after that. So
Yeah.
it's just a growth process, like us as artists, as me as a designer, as an artist. Like you grow, you develop, you rebrand. That's kind of what they did.
So when they went out on tour as Death Cult, did they just play that one album?
Pretty much, they basically played that album. They played "She Sells Sanctuary," "Rain." They basically said they weren't going to play anything past "Rain," the
Okay.
"Rain," where the album that "Rain" is on. And then they had "Spirit Walker," I think was another song that they played on there. But I mean, it was like 17 or 18 songs. I mean,
Right.
it was a
Right.
pretty. I mean, also those songs, some of them are shorter than others, so the set, while if you're doing, Firewoman or, any of the older songs that are definitely like 5 to 6 minutes long, these songs, some of them are like 2 or 3 minutes long. So,
Yeah.
the set times kind of truncate themselves, but, I mean,
But
it's
is it
fine.
basically just the same fans? Like they just go, "Oh, the Cult is back again, and this time they're back as the Death Cult, and so I'm just going to get
It's,
tickets again," right?
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The thing is, this is the first time this band has played these songs in 40, 39, 38 to
That's
40 years,
cool.
something
Yeah.
like that, give or take.
Yeah.
So the nostalgia of these people coming to, and the band made an effort to play smaller rooms. They wanted to play rooms that they played back then.
Oh, I see.
So,
That's cool.
we were in, yeah, so like
But
we
in a sense,
played,
it's kind of like Kiss saying we're going to do just the Destroyer album or whatever, right? And
exactly,
going and touring,
exactly,
which
exactly.
a lot of sort of classic rock bands are starting to do now. Like I just saw one. the other day who's going, oh, an 80s band. Who was it? Rat. Rat, or he's touring Rat with, and they're doing the entire Out of the Cellar album.
Oh, that's
And,
cool.
but a lot of, Sebastian Bach is doing it too. He's doing the first Skid Row album,
Oh,
which I
cool.
forget what it's called. I was never a huge fan, but yeah, so that's cool. So, but I mean, was it the same design, or did you actually change up the
Um,
design too?
so the challenge for that show was we in the middle of so in October we went out to do a West Coast run with just straight up Cult. But in the middle of that, we did a show at the Ace Hotel in LA. That was Death Cult. It was we were doing one night in LA, this Death Cult show, and I had to basically start programming these songs with the existing Cult rig. And then when I went to the UK, I adapted it. So one of the cool things about Ian is he's like he wants it to be as hazy as a cemetery on stage. He told me that he's like I want it to be dark. I don't want front light. So that's a challenge to
Yeah.
let the audience be able to see them without pissing off the talent.
Yeah.
And you're
I mean, I
never
saw pictures.
never
I just thought maybe you were a shitty designer or something. I could never see the band. No, I'm kidding.
you could actually see them. The crazy thing is you actually could see them. And I would my front light color choices were always really important. They were not overly saturated, but like it was a blue with a little paler blue than I would use in a fully saturated blue.
Yeah.
um and it would be enough for them to feel comfortable on stage. The other thing is he loves strobes, so I had to, in my initial Cult design, I had 8 JDC ones. On this, I added four more. I added a bunch more mega points on towers. I kept the core of what I had in my programming, but I just beefed it up. And I think I had some Tetra ones that unfortunately the vendor didn't have, so I just cut them.
Yeah.
The Tetra ones were like lighting the back line, and we
Yeah.
didn't need to do that for
Yeah.
this. So,
That's cool. And a
but yeah,
Hog 4,
no,
of
it was
course.
all on a hug for. I actually I brought my fly rig console, which I built, which is great. It fits in a 1637 Pelican, and I can fly anywhere in the world with it. It has 64 universes, more than MA3 full size.
Wow. Have you never had any pressure to like learn an MA console, or do you know an MA console well enough to run a show, or
I could run a show, but I can't program a show on it.
yeah.
And I see. My whole thing is I'd rather be really good at one thing than just okay at others.
Yeah.
Um, I, you know, the, I picked up learning Hog in college. We got an amazing capital improvement grant when I was in college, and my first moving lights console was a Hog 500. So
Hmm.
basically, that's what I learned on. So I felt really comfortable, like 20 plus years. That's what I felt comfortable on. Obviously, a Hog 500 is a huge, huge leaps and bounds to, a Hog 4 right now. But it's just what I feel comfortable with. I can program just as good of a show as anyone on an MA.
Yeah.
It's not a Hog 3, and I'm sure the MA family of people would loved that the Hog 3 happened, because they did get the lion's share of Hog 3 programmers moving over to the MA.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, when it
they
was
lost their
crashing.
market really quickly on the Hog 3. Because the Hog
Yep.
2 owned the market. I mean, like
Oh,
literally
absolutely.
98% of the console market was Hog 2. And then
Absolutely.
Hog 3 happened and it kind of went, "Woo, let's create like these fingers of lots of different stuff out there, because the Hog
Well,
3 had some issues."
I will say, just to any manufacturer listening here, don't ever put a three in the name of your product. There's the Mac 3, the Hog 3,
Yeah. Yeah,
mm,
and other threes, yeah.
another three.
How many enemies you want to make on one podcast? We got to be careful here.
I'm not going to.
Yeah.
It's all about the love. No, I mean, honestly, it's we can all razz each other. I
Yeah.
get so much crap for being a hog guy, but there's plenty of work, and I like being known as one of the guys
Well,
to
and
be able to come in and do it. So
it's also nice to be important to your vendor. You know what I mean? Like you can
yeah,
call ETC and say, "Hey, here's some things that I'd like to see changed." Or, I'm sure they're probably going to talk to you when they're creating the Hog 5 if they probably already are creating the Hog 5, but I'm sure they're going to talk to you because you've been one of their most loyal users, still to this day.
I mean,
So,
there are more of us out there. I'm
of
just going to let
course.
you know,
No,
but
no. I mean, we sell used hog fours as fast as we get them. So I know
yeah.
there's lots of happy users of hog fours, but yeah, I mean, I just wonder, like, as a guy in New York who's looking to put food on the table and stuff, are you forced to at some point learn the MA2, MA3, MA whatever? And it doesn't
I
seem
mean,
like it.
yeah, I mean, I survived a global pandemic living in New York City, and I found
Barely.
somehow found a way, barely,
Yeah,
somehow,
all of us. Yeah. Yeah.
somehow found a way to pay my rent. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
I wanted to talk about that because I every once in a while I go back and watch some of the Zoom calls that I recorded. I didn't record them all,
oh
but I
my
recorded
God.
some of them,
I
and there
saw
was
I
one.
saw one of your ones that you posted on Instagram, on the Geezer's Instagram, and it's just
Uh,
it's zoomed in on like four of us. It's Marcia Stern and me up at the top, and I just am
yeah,
like,
well,
can
I
we get
think
out of
that's,
this?
and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that how we met? Like on those Zoom calls? Like I don't think
Yeah.
I knew you before that,
No,
and
I didn't know you.
we got to know
And
each
I
other
have to
pretty
say,
well
and
and
I
became
wanted,
friends.
yeah, and I wanted to say thank you so very much for doing those, because it was such a, I looked forward to those every week. Like
Yeah,
that was like
me
my
too.
my touch with reality,
Yeah, no, me too. I looked forward to it as well. I mean, a lot of us, we were sort of going through detox or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was just like everything's gone. Like my whole life is gone. All my friends are gone. What do I do? I mean, you could still talk to your friends, but it just wasn't the same.
Sure.
But where that whole idea came from was I owned a franchise company as well, and it was actually had just wound down, but I still knew a lot of people in the franchise business. And one of my franchise friends said, I was just on a Zoom happy hour. And I said, "What's a Zoom happy hour?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, everybody just goes on there and drinks." And I said, "Well, geez, I got to do a Zoom happy hour for my industry because everyone loves to drink in my industry, and nobody's got anything to do right now. We're completely shut down." And so it just started as that, it was just like, hey, I threw it out there and see if anybody shows up. And I think the first week, like 10 or 15 people showed up, and the next week it was 20, and the next week it was 25. And,
I mean, we had
and
up to we had up to 100 at one point,
yeah,
right?
I think I had
Wasn't it
over
like
a
something?
hundred because I had to upgrade Zoom for a bit there and pay for the over 100 one.
Yeah.
And but some weeks got a little tense because we were also going through an election period, and so not everyone agreed on everything politically, of course,
Yeah.
and socially. Like there were some people who were really into some social topics and some people who were a little bit
Mhm.
against them, and it was funny because some people were more vocal than others on the other
Sure.
side, especially like on the, call it the Trump MAGA side or whatever, and didn't really say much, but I'd get calls from those people after the podcast going, that asshole said blah 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 and rah, 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 rah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why don't you just discuss it during the thing? And
Well,
I guess it was really hard because it was a toxic environment,
yeah. Well, it doesn't help when you start talking politics and you're drinking. So,
Right, right. And, I remember one time the most tense it ever got. I was actually at a racetrack, go figure.
oh yeah,
And
watching your son, right? Yeah.
yeah, and I remember Greg Jones from Martin goes, so I just want to ask a question. Where's everybody on masking? And
Oh
I
yeah,
was
I
just like,
remember that.
oh, we shouldn't go there. And then I think it was Koenig who went, why not? And I said, because we promised we'd never talk about politics or anything divisive.
Uh,
And he goes, well, why the fuck should masks be political or divisive? And I went, well, this is exactly why we shouldn't talk about this, right? Let's just stay friendly. Why not? And
Yeah.
then it got a little bit ugly. And finally, I was like,
Yeah.
guys, I'm just going to end the call because I don't want to argue. Like, I don't want to be in
Yeah.
this position. I love all of you. And, you know, so, and I'm the same today. Like I'm
Yeah.
getting ready to start shutting down Facebook here soon because it's going to start getting the same way again. And I just don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I
Sometimes a
don't like it.
digital detox is a good thing to have.
Yeah. But,
It's a
you know,
good,
the
yeah.
other thing that I remembered while I was prepping for this podcast was you were a big part of the We Make Events thing. And,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, when that idea first started circulating, you raised your hand instantly and said, yep, I'm in. I want to be a part of it. And you
Just,
became part of that initial sort
yeah.
of exploratory discussion that we had.
Yeah.
And,
It gave me, I mean, I got to say, like, especially for our industry, it gave me so much purpose, especially when it's like every day, it's like the same. So what are you going to do? It's like, it was so amazing to be able to get on phone calls with people and plan and just
lighting,
bring I
lighting
mean, yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You
yeah.
know, it was probably the first time in history that, you know, that many lighting people were so excited to work for free, you know?
I
And,
know, exactly.
but it really was like, I mean, people seeing lighting companies loading up trucks full of lights. I mean, some of these
Yeah,
gigs were big, you know, and
yeah,
they were loading up lights and trusses and all kinds of stuff and programming and everything. And they were so happy to do it. It's the proudest I've ever been in my career and the most happy I've ever been to be a part of something. Like I remember saying to my girlfriend the night that it was going on and I was watching the
the live
Christian
stream.
Jackson live stream
Yeah,
thing. I remember saying to my girlfriend, you know, this is definitely a pinch me moment, like something that hopefully we never have to do again. But I'm so happy that I was a part of it, you know?
I mean the camaraderie, like the
Ah,
people that I met in this industry, like people that I would probably never meet, that you're friends with, obviously, because you're
yeah,
just so connected, but like Norm Schwab and like all the West Coast Light Switch people and,
yeah.
just all of those people, coming together and, it was so amazing. I actually still, over here,
Oh, that's
Marcia,
cool.
Marcia gave me these are the gobos.
Yeah, she gave me some too, but I never got smart enough to frame them. So I'm going to have to do that. That's a great idea. That's a really cool
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, she
And
sent me a
it's
t
nice.
shirt and some gobos.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to just look at it and remember and like kind of smile.
Hell
It's
yeah.
just it was it it I definitely, like, I just remember when we were in New York City and, like, Herrick was going around taking photos of like putting the We Make Events logo on the theaters. And then, somebody called us or something and said the Empire State Building just went red. The Empire State Building just,
I
that was like,
know. That
oh
was
my
crazy.
God, it's amazing. And having Madison Square Garden and just, it was
Yeah. No, it was
I'm getting a little teary eyed here for a
oh dude, it was
second.
crazy. It was again, I mean, I was probably up 24 hours at one point and
Yeah,
you know, because there was just a lot going on, like coordinating a lot of different people and different things and media and you know, trying to do this broadcast thing with Christian and I had no idea what I was doing and thank God he kind of did. And no, I mean the coolest thing ever. I wish it would have swung the politicians a little more than it did, but you
yeah,
can talk to people from outside our industry today about that, and they go, "Oh, you were a part of that. That's really cool. I remember that. You know, I saw
yeah,
so and so was red or whatever." So yeah, that was
yeah,
cool. But you were a big part of that. You were right
yeah,
there at the front end of it. So
yeah.
you know, part of the sort of core 4 or 8 or whatever it was. I don't
I
remember
think
how
there were
many
like
people we
eight
had.
or eight
Yeah,
or 10 of us. Yeah, it was like
yeah.
Chris Hassan and
Yeah,
a bunch of other
Chris
people. Yeah,
Asen, Marsha,
or
you,
Asen. Yeah.
me, Cosmo, Brad
Oh
Nelms, of
yeah,
course,
Cosmo.
who became the leader of it when I couldn't do it anymore because it was just too much.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun. It
it
was a
was
cool
great.
moment. Yeah,
Yeah, we went to war together, brother.
we absolutely did. It was fun, and sometimes we didn't agree on everything, but we found a way to the end of it somehow. You know?
Compromise,
Yeah.
compromise.
Well, that's what this industry's about, right? Getting it done.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you taking
Oh,
some time today, Mr. Matt.
absolutely.
It's been fun
Absolutely.
to get you on finally. I thought you were just too young, so I had to wait until you aged a bit. I see a little
I'm
tiny bit
not
of
that
gray in your
young, my
beard.
friends. I'm not that young.
Tiny bit of gray in your beard, and you got a girlfriend
Tiny.
now and stuff. So, you've matured, young man.
Yeah, a little bit older, a little bit wiser.
Is she sick of the touring business yet?
It's always a challenge.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
we actually met during the pandemic, and it was, I I've never not been truthful about what I
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
and the extent of my traveling.
Yeah.
I have cut back a little bit on my traveling.
Yeah.
I've been a little more selective on
Yeah.
jobs. Like before we dated, before the pandemic, I would just take whatever I could because
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
But I do miss being home, but I also miss being on the road. And
Yeah.
it's not because I want to escape anything going on here. I
Mhm.
absolutely love being home. I
Yeah.
just love lighting. I
Well, it's part
love
of your life. It's a big part of
doing
your life.
shows.
Yeah. I mean, what are
Yeah,
you going to
I
do? It's a
just,
big part of your life. And it's amazing when you find somebody who is understanding about it, and can
yeah.
deal with it. Not everyone can. Obviously, it's a tough lifestyle to be a part of.
I mean, it's not all roses and
Of
unicorns
course,
and
yeah.
stuff.
Of course.
There are
There's
days where I'm 5 hour time difference, or
yeah.
and getting able to have those conversations. It can be a challenge, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's all about compromise and trying to make it work.
Yeah.
And hopefully, hopefully we can keep on
Well,
trucking down
yeah.
this road.
Well, and having the discipline and just care to get up at the right time to make sure you make that call or whatever, like the windows and to hit those windows and
Sure.
stuff. Like it's hard. I mean, again, especially when you're in
Yeah.
Europe and she's probably got a regular good job and she goes to work and so
Mhm.
yeah. Well, good luck to you with that.
Well, I
Seems like you
appreciate
guys are
that, my
having
friend.
fun. I see your pictures. So
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying.
cool. All right, buddy.
Well, it's good to see you, my friends.
And you as well.
All right. Talk to you
Stay
soon.
safe. All right, buddy.